For 6 years straight, the smartest people in American business agreed on one thing: Enron was the most innovative company in the country. Fortune magazine handed it that crown 6 years in a row. The stock was a rocket, and Wall Street was in love. There was just one problem. If you asked almost anyone, including the people cashing the checks, to explain how Enron actually made its money, they couldn't, not really. And that gap between how good it looked and how little anyone could explain it is the whole story. Enron wasn't a company that failed. It was a magic trick that ran out of road. At its peak, it was worth around $70 billion, and the stock hit $90 a share. In less than a year, it fell to almost nothing and took 20,000 people's jobs and life savings with it. This is how the most admired company in America turned out to be the biggest fraud anyone had ever seen. And the warning sign was sitting in plain sight the whole time. It starts with Kenneth Lay, who builds Enron in Houston as a boring natural gas pipeline company. Boring is safe, but boring doesn't make you a legend. So Lay brings in a brilliant, aggressive thinker named Jeffrey Skilling, and Skilling has a vision. He doesn't want Enron to own pipelines and power plants. He wants Enron to trade energy the way Wall Street trades stocks. And to make the numbers sing, he gets permission to use something called mark-to-market accounting. Follow this closely, because this is the trick, and it's simpler than they want you to think. Normally, you sell something and you book the money when the money actually shows up. Mark-to-market let Enron sign a 20-year deal and book all 20 years of imagined profit today, as if it had already happened. So they would guess what a deal might earn over decades, write that guess down as profit in hand, and hand it to Wall Street. If the guess was wrong, and it often was, that was a problem for another day. The scoreboard looked incredible. And on Wall Street, the scoreboard is the whole game. But there is a catch with pretending to be rich. The real bills still come. Enron was borrowing enormous sums and sinking them into projects that flopped. And if that debt showed up on the books, the whole illusion falls apart. So they hand the problem to their chief financial officer, Andrew Fastow. And Fastow builds something genuinely clever and genuinely rotten. He creates a web of secret side companies with strange little names: LJM, Raptor, Chuco. On paper, they look like separate businesses. In reality, they existed for one job. Enron would shove its debt and its failing projects into these shells, so they vanished off Enron's books. The losses were still real. They were just moved into another room where nobody was looking. And here is the part that should stop you cold. Fastow was secretly running some of those side companies himself, pocketing millions off the very deals he was supposed to be protecting shareholders from. A setup like this only survives if the referee looks away. Enron's referee was its accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, one of the most trusted names in the business. But Andersen was pulling in tens of millions from Enron, not just to check the books, but to consult on them too. When the people grading the test only get paid if you pass, you pass. For a while it holds, but watch for the one moment it starts to crack, because it comes from the inside. A vice president named Sharon Watkins writes a memo to Ken Lay and warns him in plain words that the company could implode in a wave of accounting scandals. She saw it coming. Then, in August of 2001, the mastermind himself, Jeff Skilling, abruptly quits. The CEO of the most admired company in America, gone, out of nowhere, citing personal reasons. When the captain steps off the ship on a calm, sunny day, look at the water. Reporters and analysts start pulling the thread, asking one question nobody at Enron could answer: where is the debt? By October, Enron admits it has to wipe out over $1 billion in value and confess to hundreds of millions in hidden losses. Once the market catches the scent, the fall is not slow. That $90 stock slides toward a single dollar. Over at Arthur Andersen, people panic and start shredding Enron documents by the ton. On December 2nd, 2001, Enron files for bankruptcy. $63 billion in assets, the largest corporate collapse the country had ever seen. Now here is the part that actually matters, because the people who pay are not the ones at the top. For months, Enron told its own employees the stock was a great buy. A huge share of their retirement savings was locked into it, and as it crashed, they watched their futures vanish in real time, and they were blocked from selling. 4,000 people lost their jobs almost overnight. Around 20,000 lost pieces of their future. Shareholders lost roughly $74 billion. And the executives? Many had quietly sold their own shares near the peak while telling everyone else to keep buying. As for the reckoning, Jeff Skilling got 24 years, later trimmed to about 14. Andrew Fastow cooperated and served 6. Kenneth Lay was convicted too, but died of a heart attack before he was ever sentenced. And Arthur Andersen, a firm of 85,000 people worldwide, was simply gone. The scandal was so big it forced Congress to pass a whole new law, Sarbanes-Oxley, to make the next one harder. So what do you carry out of this? The biggest lesson is the simplest. If you can't understand how a company makes its money, that usually isn't because you're not smart enough. A lot of the time, the confusion is the product. Complexity is where fraud goes to hide. A real business can be explained on a napkin. When something is too tangled to explain, slow down, because complicated is often just a costume that debt wears. And here's something every firefighter learns the hard way. The fire you can see is not the one that gets you. The dangerous ones hide. They burn inside the walls, behind the ceiling, quiet, while everybody stands in a room that looks perfectly fine. By the time it shows itself, the structure is already gone. Enron was a fire in the walls. Everything looked fine right up until the second it didn't. So when a company's books are too complicated to read, don't call it sophisticated, call it smoke, coming from somewhere you can't see. Enron is buried now, the company that was too smart to fail and too clever to be honest. This is the money graveyard, where we dig up the fortunes that died so yours doesn't have to. The next one didn't hide behind complexity, he hid behind trust, a quiet, respected man on Wall Street who ran the largest Ponzi scheme in history and stole from thousands of people who handed him everything. That's Bernie Madoff, and he's right here on the channel. I'll see you there.